Hello folks, hope you're doing well. So welcome back to another One Piece review. This time we're covering Manga chapter 1154. Now I have to say, this chapter was like a definite boost in this King Harold flashback, but I find it intriguing that a lot of people are going to have the ending of this chapter as what stands alone as this chapter being epic. I disagree. Who's shocked by this as far as like the appearance and the connection of Rock Stevenson? I'm more intrigued about the conversation we get involving Ja Rule and King Harold that relates to a certain reverie and another incident that took place. So that to me is content and information I wanted to get ever since Oda revealed King Harold was going to be a big deal in Elbaf as far as the lore is concerned. So to me, that's what stands out in this chapter. Other than the fact that Oda continues to put the focus on the magnifying glass, I guess the discrimination continuing on in Elbaf, and it's more prevalent with Loki and Haradine. And Oda needed to flip the script considering that the previous chapter did not make Haradine look good at all. So I knew this was coming. It's not a shock either. So like I said, the moment involving King Harold and Ja Rule and that conversation and the information we get that could possibly tie it through Void Century, I don't know. We'll definitely get into that. Speaking of intriguing, we've got the Yamato cover story with Yamato, the daimyo of Ringo, Okiku, the new boss of the Yakuza, Ocho, and along with Page One and Ulti arriving. Not really a lot that goes down. The only thing that stands out to me is like Ulti is dying on her head. So I don't know why, unless that place is connected to Hanafunda, the father of Page 1 and Ulti. But the caption that Oda gives us with this Yamato cover page, in this Yamato cover story, is at the grave of a hero born in the West Blue and brought up in Ringo. So I'm only throwing Hanafunda as a possibility of that place being the grave of, because why else would Ulti be darting off like that? So we start off the chapter and immediately Oda ties this back into the Big Mom flashback, the Charlotte Linlin incident that took place 63 years ago with Linlin killing Ja Rule, not Jarl. Ja Rule gets taken out by Big Mom. But this incident and a lot of calamities that followed were penciled in and tied into the birth part of the curse of Loki being born, which is absolutely ridiculous because it's not his fault. It's just the way things have worked out that's going to lead into Loki's redemption arc. There's two scenes in particular that really stand out to me as far as like, yeah, you can see this is where Oda's going. And we go back to good old mother, Estrid, who is still alive, which I'm kind of surprised, but she doesn't have much longer to go. Rejecting Loki while bedridden and blaming this on her servant. It's like failing to kill that brat immediately, failing to kill Loki from the get-go. And the servant's like, no, you got it all wrong. Out of nowhere, Loki just busts through Estrid's bedroom door like a jump scare, like, hello, mother. And Estrid, that face, does not want any part of this. But I have to admit, it was kind of hilarious, this scene, because of the look that Loki gives, like, hello, mother, I know you tried to kill me. Again, Estrid is like really rejecting Loki, and you really get the sense of like the tragedy of Loki here, because Loki, he doesn't know any better. He's just innocent, looking for a mother's affection like any infant or child would, and still being rejected. Because you see Loki completely tear it up. So we go from this to another scene involving a child crying, and a mother like comforting her child. But the reason for that is because like giants are stealing from their own. Because you see a mother comforting her child, saying, I'm sorry, we don't have any bread left. And Oda again just shows you why there's so much distrust and discrimination amongst Elbaf. And then these giants go on to say, maybe we should go and steal from the humans. It would be easy enough. And you got other giants like, no, we shouldn't do that. That would bring shame. So you can see things going awry because Harold is not there to set them right. This all leads to one giant in particular, kind of like talking with two silhouettes that are in the background, but this is all bringing up a certain rumor about a prince being born in the castle. Only then to like have Haradine and Ida enter this scene. this is what I said at the beginning. Oda decided to balance things out as far as like the tragedy of both Loki and Hardy, because it's not just Loki that gets it rough. As this same giant busts through their home, you see Ida there just like trying to like shield herself, and Hardy is like trying to protect her in a way. But this giant is like blaming Hardy for like, oh, your brother doomed this entire country. And again, it's not Hardy's fault. He obviously is vilified because of this. So again, this is why there's so much distrust. And because like this giant goes on to say, you'll take responsibility as a sacrifice. Ida's like protesting this and like saying, like hell you will, like a good mother would. She steps up and tries to protest this, but she ends up getting grabbed by this giant who's about to attack her. But then in comes King Harold like a boss, out of nowhere, returning to Elbaf, out of nowhere, punching this guy, knocking him out. It was epic as hell. So we get a reunion involving the trio, so that was cool. After this, after KOing this guy, yeah, I'm kind of aware about the birth of Loki, even though he wasn't around, which is another part of this tragedy. But he's back now, and apparently he has a supply of food because of humans that he befriended. So that was actually kind of ironic, considering how the giants reacted. And here's Harold with, here you go, here's some food for you all. So stop stealing from one another. And the one line that he ends up saying to Haradine that really sticks out, and it should, while Ida and Haradine are like crying, which is really cool. Like I said, we get a reunion involving the trio. King Harold's like, you brothers, you must not fight amongst each other, which I feel like is going to tie into the resolution between the two. So on the flip side of this, he returns to the castle where Estrid's funeral has taken place because she's succumbed to this illness, which we knew what was going to happen because it was mentioned by, like I mentioned in the previous review, Road mentioned this to Nami, Luffy, and Zoro back at the castle. So we knew this happened, but obviously yes, obviously she got what she deserved because of the way she acted, but it really paints the picture, literally, involving Loki. As far as Estrid's concerned, even with the caption of the Oda's giving here, with Queen Estrid rejecting her son with bitter hatred until her final breath. I mean, talk about a sad way to go out. It shows you what kind of stand-up character King Harold has become. The fact that King Harold is tearing up and crying over this woman, considering the rotten attitude she showed even before Loki was born. And King Harold was there. He didn't seem interested at all. But the fact that King Harold is showing tears for this woman. Now, I wonder, had he been around to see Estrid acting the way she did towards Loki, would he have kept that same energy? I don't know. Following this, immediately, for the first time in Loki's life, somebody's there to hold Loki in their arms. In the previous chapter, that's what Loki is looking for as an infant. He was looking for that affection, for somebody to embrace him. He got none of that because of his mother and the way she was acting. One of the scenes that stands out to me, as far as Loki's concerned, as far as his childhood, because finally somebody's there to hold Loki in their arms, but at this point it's too little too late. And even King Harold is quick to point out, yeah, he doesn't seem happy at all. And Oda doubles down on this by said, at only a few months old, Loki had completely given up on love, which I feel like is going to come back to the forefront in the present, as far as Loki's character is concerned and his redemption. But there is a brief mention about Loki and the fact that he was born with a condition with his eyes. He can see, but there's a condition that affects his eyes. So now I don't know if Oda's going to dive into this. I don't expect he would, considering Queen Estrid is pretty much out of the picture. No pun intended. But I'm going to go on a limb here that maybe Estrid's illness has something to do with Loki's condition. I'm only thinking this because of what we saw with Ginny and Barney recently in the anime. But Barney ends up being cured, but that disease ends up taking Ginny's life because she was exposed to daylight, tried to protect her child. Immediately following this, we got King Harold occupied a meeting on Elbaf. Meanwhile, you got Estrid's older brother being introduced as the personal servant of Loki, and obviously being an asshole runs in the family because he's just as much of an asshole as she was. But he gets his just rewards. Speaking of which, we join up with Haradin and Ida. And Ida continues to be a standout character of this entire flashback because Haradin is still like talking about the underworld, the realm of the dead in Elbaf, and like, why are you talking about this? I mean, your brother just as an infant pretty much survived the moment he was born and thrown into the pits of hell, literally, and he climbed back up from the brink of death. So I don't know why Haradin is like talking about this, but Ida is in charge of this tavern, and I like how Ida's trying to think of ways to be of help to King Harold, even though she can't necessarily be with King Harold. So I like that. Now Oda cuts to 56 years ago at Jarl's house on Elbaf, where we get this discussion from Jarl and Harold. Now the beginning portion of this discussion is quite clearly describing who we see at the end of this chapter. However, the middle part of this discussion is what got my attention. So they start off with King Harold was a part of the revelry. However, he got smuggled in as one of the friends who was a king invited to this revelry. He got smuggled in as a guard. So because he couldn't ask any questions, otherwise that would blow his cover. And the only reason he didn't get found out is because another murder happened. So another murder happened at a revelry. Go figure. Now, before I dive further into this scene, I do want to mention when King Harold's flashback was first introduced by Oda, Shanks mentioned that he met King Harold at the Holy Land of Meridioa at one point. So, unless Shanks met him as an infant, which I highly doubt, so we know it's not just the once that King Harold went to Meridioa. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not, because we know he has some type of affiliation with the world government following this. But this is part of the conversation involving King Harold and Jarl that got my full attention, because it goes on to say, if you'd have been caught, that would have been the last of your problems, because you've heard the story about the Warhammer Company, a group of giant shipwrights. Now, I don't know if he's talking about Galilea, the company we come to see on Water 7, or if it's its own company. I don't know. There's a group of giant shipwrights that arm themselves with warhammers. I'm going to throw this out there because one of the silhouettes we see kind of resembles Oars, or Oars Jr. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because it has been referenced multiple times in Elbaf as far as the lore is concerned. But apparently it's not just a small group, it's like a group of 100 warriors that were taken prisoner, including ancient giants. So it's not a group of ancient giants, it includes ancient giants. So I just want to make that very clear. Now, according to Jarl, while traveling the seas, they did send letters back to Elbaf. He in fact got the final letter they sent to Elbaf, which pretty much describes their capture, them being captured. Then King Harold kind of puts two and two together and thinks, was the world government responsible? And Jarl pretty much says there's no doubt. They faced a great enemy, however they sank deep into the ocean at a certain point in history. To be blunt, I'll circle back to this by the end because I have something to add to this. But then Jarl's like, this wasn't personal. It's like, this is probably what happened. This is why the world government rejected hearing you out. There's definitely something shady going on here, so it's not just a case of like King Harold being manipulated. There's more to this. Immediately following this scene, we go to the castle where Loki is kind of being like berated by Estrid's brother. Like I said, being an asshole runs in the family, it looks like, because he's completely looking down on Loki. This comes back to bite him in the ass because we see Loki growing up to the point where Loki actually responds. One, he killed Ajwa, the horse of fortune. I guess it wasn't a lucky horse after all, because we find out the horse is dead, and we also come to find out the body of Estrid's brother was found in the underworld, so he's dead too. So I guess Loki pulled what his dear old mother did and threw Estrid's brother into the pits of hell, leaving him for dead, which was ironic and poetic justice, if you ask me. So then Oda jumps to 48 years ago. King Harold, and it looks like Loki and Haradin are like side by side, but you could clearly tell there's animosity, especially following this, because you can see King Harold front and center. You see two gods, and you see the two panels of the two children looking on, meeting for the first time. Because following this, we find out that King Harold has left Elbaf again to like bring other nations together with Elbaf. So he's not around, so shit hits the fan again on Elbaf. Only this time, Loki, with a group of beast friends he's made, are causing havoc throughout Elbaf. And this is what leads to the first showdown involving Haradin and Loki, and why there's so much animosity between the two, and understandably so. Now, I don't know if one of the women that we see that's running is like Gerd's mother. Could very well be. Because this is where we get the first standoff where Haradin is actually standing up to Loki, but Loki's like, get that fucking shit out of here. Like, I don't know why people respect my father. But then Loki throws what Haradin said in the previous chapter back in his face. You think you can get to call my father Dad? Which is basically what Haradin said about Loki not being his brother because they don't have the same mother. But then Haradin, this is how you know Ida is like the most standout character in this entire flashback, because he takes his mother's ideology and his words of what Ida said to King Harold and throws them right back in Loki's face, because he says we should try to see each other's perspective, but don't get cocky just because you're big, which is exactly the same thing that his mother told King Harold when his outlook on life pretty much changed from that point on. Because Ida's like, don't be cocky just because you were born on Elbaf and born big. Unfortunately, this gets Haradin his ass kicked, but you could tell you can definitely see the influence of both parents within Loki and Haradin. Loki acting like King Harold did back in the day when he was a child, because he was a delinquent too, just like Loki is. Speaking of Gerd, we see Gerd and Goldberg introduced into this scene as Haradin's childhood friends. This is how you know that Elbaf is entering a new era in the present, because Gerd, while concerned about Haradin in the past, in this scene, is the one that's nursing Loki back to health in the present. So I find that incredibly ironic. And Oda introduced these two in the scene specifically. You got Loki looking in the background, looking very pissed off. What is pissing off Loki deep down inside? Because following this, Loki is like doubling down, causing problems. And this scene is what sticks out and really hits Loki hard, because while being a terror on Elbaf, you see a mother comforting a child after being beaten, presumably by Loki's assault. We don't really know because it cuts all over the place. But you see Loki's reaction to this, and even though he's smiling, you know deep down he's trying to hold back the tears. Because immediately following this, he tries to commit suicide. He tries to throw himself into the realm of the dead, into the underworld, trying to commit suicide. It's the title of the chapter. I can't even die. And by this point in Loki's life, Loki's doing this out of spite and rage because of everything that's been abused. And listen, that's the tragedy of all this. But this incident of Loki trying to kill himself leads to an unfateful encounter in the realm of the dead, in the underworld. How ironic. We get Loki tearing up because he can't die. Then, out of nowhere, in comes the Rocks Pirates. 4 of the Rocks Pirates. Now, it's obviously they're still being established because we don't see the entire crew. We only see 4 members, including their captain, Buckingham Stussy, the real Stussy. We also see Shiki, Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, and of course, Rox Dieselbeck. I'll get back to it in a second because we actually get the reveal. But this is the encounter that leads Loki to meeting Zebek for the first time. So that explains that. Zebek is here to like question Loki about where the hell is King Harold. This is Elbaf, isn't it? So Loki doesn't, I don't know if he can respond or doesn't know what's going on here, but we know what happens following this as far as Loki's life and who he chooses to idolize as his hero. So his hero shows up asking questions, but Oda leads off with a caption and hyping this man up as if he needed it. But Harold spotted this particular man 8 years ago during the reverie, single-handedly killed an admiral and vanished without a trace. So you know this is Sencho, the captain of Kaido, when he actually killed an admiral and Kaido got captured by Marines intentionally just to steal food. That earned him a huge bounty. And Oda ends this chapter with the worst kept secret. Roxy Zebek, the father of Teach, Muscle D Teach, Blackbeard, is revealed. Appearance and name and all is finally revealed, as if it was a shock to anybody. Even if Oda did end off with the caption of father of Emperor Blackbeard, it was already given away through the face of Roxy Zebek, and no wonder Oda kept it silhouetted for so long. because obviously would have known this. Now, I will say, unlike his son, Rocksteady's back looks jacked. I will say that. Obviously, Oda hyping this guy up like nobody's business. So this explains why not only did we see the rocks on Elbaf, but why they were doing what they were doing there in the first place. Now, I do have a question about this. Is this one instance of them showing up in Elbaf, or is this going to be a multiple situation of them showing up? Because when Oda first revealed this, like several months ago, it was only Whitebeard, Edwin Newgate, and Rocksteady Zebek showing up in Elbaf. So, was there more to the scene, and we're going to see the full scene of Stussy and Shiki also in that scene? Or is this a case of they're going to be bouncing back and forth because they have history with King Harold? Now, the first question that immediately comes to mind, since King Harold mentioned that he was smuggled in by a king, and we know Teach wants Full-Lead Island, Hachinose, to be recognised as a full-on country by the world government. So, was Rocksteady Zebek a king back in the day? And was he the one that smuggled King Harold into Marajoa? Oda's done with the charade as if it was a shock to anybody, like I said. Like I said at the beginning, I know people have this as epic, as this being the reason why this chapter is epic. I don't see how. Yes, it's epic in its own way, but how is this shocking to anybody? One of the worst kept secrets in One Piece. Oda decided to just do away with the charade as if we didn't know any better. Now, I'll jump back to this because I think this is going to play a role, which I already said previously. So, also in the conversation that King Harold has with Jarl, the reveal of the Warhammer Company, the group of giants, 100 giants, some of them being ancient giants, but they're obviously being captured by the world government. At least King Harold puts two and two together. Now, we don't know that for sure, and Jarl doesn't really specify whether or not when he actually got that final letter, or when they actually got captured. But I'm going to go on a limb and say they're not alive. So, where was this group? And it's not really much of a surprising theory, really. Because this could only be pointing to one thing. And that's this group, the Warhammer Company, or Galila, we don't know at this point, having a connection, or them possibly having Joy Boy as their captain. I'm still sticking to my guns, but the final battle that took place involving Nika, Joy Boy, and Ibu happened on Elbaf with the three worlds. We know the three worlds, the dialogue, the Harley, everything. Is that what this leads to? Did the giants side with Joy Boy, and that's the reason they were captured? Now, like I said before, one of the silhouettes kind of resembles oars, so that's the only connection I can see to this. That's the part that sticks out to me, because that could very well tie into the Void Century if that is the case. The fact that this group, now, I don't know if this Oda playing on words here, but he does go on to say this Warhammer Company sank into the sea. Now, in Edgar Island, when Vegapunk is giving his broadcast, his speech to the entire world, we do see a ancient kingdom sunk into the ocean. So it was that the kingdom that got sunk into the sea with this group of giants. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, this is a great chapter. I know a lot of people are going to hype this up about the ending. Again, to each their own. If you think that was the best part of the entire chapter, more power to you. But I don't see how that's shocking to anybody. Just like how Shanks having that symbol on his arm being linked to the Celestial Dragon is shocking to anybody, especially considering who we know his father is now, St. Figurlang Garling. So no, that's not a shocker anymore. So I appreciate people with the magnifying glasses, but there's a lot that's not shocking to us anymore. Aside from that, Oda continues to put the magnifying glass on the discrimination and the differences that Haradin and Loki have, and the reason for that is because, number one, the nature of Elbaf they grew up in, and secondly, who their parents were. Especially with Haradin, we know he comes to learn better. Loki is influenced by what he's seen. It's established when you're born, you can't deceive because you don't know any better. That's when you're at your most innocent, where you can't be influenced by the world. That's really the tragic tale in all of this. He's influenced because of the surroundings of Elbaf and because of who his mother and the way she acted. Like I said, see the panel of one mother comforting her child, and it really sticks like a sore thumb to Loki. This is going to blend into a scene involving Loki in the present. I definitely got a serious amount of Robin undertone vibes for what Robin went through and what we see Loki going through. I don't know if Oda's doing that by design, But because of this scene at the end, this is why I'm going to go on a limb and say why Loki's not going to become a Straw Hat. This scene with Rocksteady Zebek. I said this from the moment Oda introduced that Loki met Zebek and he considered his role model. But what does that do for the present going forward? Rocksteady Zebek, as far as we know, is no more. Obviously, Oda decided to drop the charade and reveal that Rocksteady Zebek was the father of Teach, if that was a shock to anybody. But the fact that he revealed that in a scene involving Loki, where does that go? Because I said this when this was introduced months ago. I mean, it had to be about 3 months ago, before the Holy Knights were fighting the Straw Hats. But I said back then, you would only introduce this fact if Teach would either show up on Elbaf or play a role with Loki going forward. This is why I said Loki's not joining the Straw Hats. Oda did this specifically 100% for like damage control, because of to prevent Haradin from getting any more hate, because Haradin, a lot of people think that overlook this, is a member of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and a lot of people want Loki to join the Straw Hats. That's not going to happen. One, because of this chapter and who his idol is, and number two, what does that do for the monster trio? And listen, people are already up in arms about the Jinbei dynamic as far as like the monster trio and how the strength is like organized. It's the reason why Yamato didn't become a Straw Hat. Oda is not going to pull the trigger and have Loki become a Straw Hat. The only unanswered question is, what does this mean for the ending of Elbaf? And this only points to either Marshall D. Teach showing up on Elbaf, or Loki, meaning Marshall D. Teach, by the end of this. What does it do going forward as far as like the present and the future of Elbaf? Does this mean Loki's going to meet Teach? Does it mean Teach is going to recruit Loki? I don't know. I definitely see that scenario playing out more so than Loki becoming a Straw Hat. I'll tell you that right now. If the danger scale of Teach showing up on Elbaf was like 40 out of 60, it's now 60 out of 40. So like I said at the beginning, this was a boost of hype that Oda gave us with this flashback, because now it's like, okay, anything can happen now. And this is what I wanted to get as far as the conversation involving Jarl and King Harold is concerned, and where that could possibly lead to the Void Century. And for all you guys that are hoping for a Kaido connection with King Harold, Oda was like, sorry, show's over. Because the rocks haven't been fully formed yet. We know there's more members a part of this, and we also know that Kaido just become a member of Rock's Pirates for another 4 years. So if you enjoyed this video, you guys know what to do. Hit that thumbs up. I appreciate that. I appreciate your support when it comes to One Piece. Comment, rate, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks, guys. Bye.